The Flying Head. Many years ago, a brave young woman called Orenda lived with her people in a land of beautiful forests and valleys. The soil was rich and allowed them to grow many crops, so you'd expect there'd always be plenty to eat. But in the mountains nearby, there was a deep cave, and once the sun went down, a terrible monster would emerge. The creature was the Flying Head, a massive head with flaming eyes and huge fangs, but no body whatsoever. Gigantic wings sprouted from each side of the head so it could swoop down when it hunted. And it hunted often because the Flying Head was always hungry. It roared and snarled so loudly the trees and the teepees trembled. Orenda watched the bravest fighters attack the Flying Head. They fired arrows and threw spears at it, but its skin was so thick and leathery that arrowheads just bounced off. Orenda helped her people sew together all the fishing nets to make one net big enough to catch the creature. The people hid in the trees and waited. The Flying Head flew low over the teepees, sniffing out food to eat. At the signal, "Now!" they flung the net out over the monster. But the Flying Head soared up and into the sky and tore the fishing net apart with its sharp fangs. The villagers tried hiding their food between rocks in the creeks or under wood piles, but the Flying Head would always find and devour it. Soon the villagers were starving. In desperation, they decided to offer up the last of their food, hoping the creature would eat its fill and leave them in peace. They left piles of food around the teepees, and then everyone, men, women and children, ran into the woods to hide. As night fell, the villagers watched the Flying Head swoop over the treetops. It quickly ate all the food that had been left out, but it was still hungry. It roared around the teepees, angrily searching for more. In the forest, the people shook with fear. Would the Flying Head eat them next? Orenda decided something had to be done. She crept to her teepee and sneaked inside. There she built up the fire and then put 10 small rocks over the flames. She pretended the rocks were pieces of meat she was cooking. She sprinkled fresh herbs and spices over the stones until a succulent aroma wafted out of the teepee. The instant the Flying Head sniffed that delicious smell, it groaned with hunger. It followed the scent until it reached the teepee of the brave young woman. With its eyes glowing red, it peered inside. Orenda knew the Flying Head was close by, but she pretended not to see it. She calmly continued cooking, adding more spices and turning the rocks carefully as if they were tender pieces of juicy meat. By now the Flying Head was licking its massive lips and drooling with hunger. The woman picked up one of the rocks with a pair of tongs and blew on it. "I must taste one of these and see if they're ready to eat." She lifted the rock to her mouth and pretended to bite it, but really she dropped the sizzling hot rock onto the floor beside her. This is surely the most delicious meal I've ever cooked." Watching through the flaps of the teepee, the Flying Head was driven mad with hunger. As the young woman lifted another rock to her mouth, the greedy creature crashed its way inside. Quickly, the young woman stepped away from the fire. The monster's eyes glowed with desire as it looked at the rocks. It opened its massive jaws, sucked all the scorching hot rocks into its mouth, and swallowed them whole. Instantly, the Flying Head felt a horrible sensation and let out a terrible cry. Then it streaked out of the teepee and away from the village. Its shrieks of pain could be heard across the mountains, and the whole earth shook with the sound. From that day on, the monster was never seen again. The joyful villagers returned to the fields and grew their crops, grateful they'd have food to eat once more. Most of all, though, they were grateful to Orenda, the clever and brave young woman who had rid them forever of the terrible Flying Head.